Be equipped, be prepared, be safe with Exquise Fire and Safety. System upgrades and installation in areas of service such as data centers, warehouses, office buildings, schools, government facilities, apartment buildings, hospitals, community centers, places of worship, and restaurants. You can get a free quote at the number 248-220-9048. This is, in my humble opinion, with Chaz Douglas. I got a very special guest, Michelle Bader Ebersole. Thanks for coming on, Michelle.
Yeah, thanks for having me today.
No problem, no problem. So my podcast, like I want to encourage, I want to inspire people. And when I came across your story, I said, and then just that you are a woman of God, I said, I got to have her on here. And so thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for asking me.
No problem. No problem. So I want to, I don't want to restrict you or limit you. So I just want you to tell your story as far as you talk about, you being a widow, at 41. Can you go into, can you go into your story?
Yeah, definitely. So, to understand kind of why that all happened, why I became widowed at 41, we have to back it up. So my husband Luke and I met in high school, but we didn't really date. We were pretty good friends, but we ended up running into each other about 4 years later, and we got married a year after that. So we had just gotten married. I was 23 and he was 24. And he noticed this lump in his ankle. And he was very athletic, very healthy, never really been sick in his life. And he eventually went to the doctor. The first time they're like, oh, it's tendonitis, you're young, don't worry about it. But it kept getting worse. And they eventually did a biopsy and they said, you have mesenchymal chondrosarcoma, which is a very rare bone cancer. So our lives completely changed. We had just gotten married, just found out we were pregnant, and then he got diagnosed with cancer. And it was a complete shock. I had no clue. I mean, I was young and had never thought this would happen to my husband. So very, very long story short, he started chemo. It didn't work. And he went on to have his leg amputated. So the good news was when his leg was amputated, there was no more cancer in his body. And so he was actually cancer-free for about 13 and a half years. And during that time, we had our son Hayden that we were pregnant with when we first got married. Then we also had 2 more kids. We had 3 kids in 3.5 years. So it was kind of a crazy time. 13 and a half years went by, and then he had another scan, and they found cancer in his lungs. And so apparently there was a cell that had been dormant in his body until it decided to grow again on his lungs, because it was it was bone cancer, but on his lungs. So we started doing chemo again, all the things, but again, nothing worked. And we were told it was terminal. And so that was very difficult this time going through it with kids. So they were about 9, 11, 13 when he was diagnosed the second time. And so we always, had a really good attitude, like we're going to do everything we can. We're going to pray every single day that God heals Daddy, but we know that it might be here on earth, it might be in heaven. And we just started down that path. And eventually, it was to a place where the doctors are like, there's nothing else we can do. So now it's about quality of life. And we just really, really enjoyed every moment together. It was actually 2020 when he passed away. And so all the kids were home because of COVID. And we just really loved that family time. We got to go to Disneyland together. There were so many things that we got to do and just enjoyed every moment. And May 23rd, 2020, he actually took his last breath. And it was kind of a shock because we were told he had about a month left, but he actually died of a blood clot that took him suddenly. But we see it as a blessing because he did not want to get where he wasn't able to take care of himself. So he was still fully functioning the day he died. And it was just a shock because we thought we had a little bit longer time. And, I'll never forget waking up my kids, and this was about 4 a.m. And I remember telling my daughter, Haley, she was 14 at the time. And she's like, no, it's not time. It's not time. I'm like, yes, it is. And God gave me this supernatural peace as he was dying to just have peace of mind, call my mom, call his mom, and lead my kids through it. And I was saying things to him like, you're going to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant, and you're going to meet my grandparents today. And I was just, it is the only way to explain it was supernatural peace. Because I look back and now I'm like, how did I do that? That was totally God, that I was calm with the kids. I was saying, talk to him. He can hear you. And was actually, we played the song I Can Only Imagine, which most people probably know is about heaven. And it was during that song that he took his last breath. And it was an absolutely heartbreaking but beautiful moment, knowing he was no longer suffering. Because he'd been really suffering with the tumors in his lungs were really big and he couldn't breathe very well. And it was just really difficult. And so knowing that he was in that moment in heaven, that really brought such peace. And so that's how I ended up being, he was 42, I was 41, widowed at 41 with 3, almost all teenagers. They were 12, 14, and 15 when he died. And being in this place of, what do I do, God? Like, this is not my plan. Even though I knew, for at least a year that this was probably going to happen, I still couldn't, really comprehend what it was going to be like. This feeling of utter aloneness. Even though I had great family, great friends, great church, when your spouse dies, it literally changes everything in your whole world. And it was like I was balancing 2 different griefs. I had the grief for my husband, and then I had grief for my kid's dad. They're missing their dad, and so it's like you're trying to balance like taking care of yourself so you can take care of them. And it was just a very, very difficult time. And I looked for widows groups. There was nothing. I started trying to figure out like, how can I find other people who have been through this? And it ended up, I found a lot of people on Facebook. It's actually the first place that I found that there were a lot of widows, and I was able to connect. I don't know how far you want me to go in my story as far as what I did next. Do you want me to keep going?
You can keep going. I don't want to, I got follow up, but I want you to keep going if and tell them what's going on. But keep going.
Okay. Yeah, I will, because it's all part of where God has brought me today. So, like I said, I couldn't really find any widows groups. So I went online. I found Widowed and Young with Children. And that's really where I connected with a lot of people. And what happened from that is I met a friend who was a widower. We became really good friends because our spouses had died around the same time from the same thing, from cancer. We both had kids, and we were just kind of looking at this widows group we were in, and we're like, these people need Jesus. Like, they're turning to all the wrong things. And so we just decided to start a podcast. It's been going for 4 years now. It's called Widowed Too Soon.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I, was just learning this podcast world as I went, watch a lot of YouTube videos, figured out how to do it. And we started just the 2 of us talking about our experiences. And as far as I know, it's still the only Christian widow podcast out there. And we just talked through everything. So the first 3 years, it was mostly, we had a few guests, but it was mostly him and me just talking through everything, like holidays, raising kids. He had little kids, I had teenagers, what it's like to date again, like just all these topics. And then he left the podcast a little over a year ago, and I was actually about to be done with it. I was like, maybe it's time to move on. And literally, I feel like God gave me this vision. All of a sudden, I saw myself handing megaphones to all these people. And I felt like God was saying, you're not done yet. There's all these people that need to tell their story. And then I changed it into mostly an interview podcast. So now I interview widows from all over the world, widows and widowers. And it's been an amazing experience. So that's one thing that I did with it. And, when you are in grief, one of the best things that you can do is to pour into other people, because it really helps your grieving. And I started that 11 months into my journey, and it was a huge part of my healing. And actually just kind of back it up to those first few months were really, really hard. I like to explain it to people that when you are in grief, it's like a cloudy, stormy day every single day in the beginning, and nothing looks like it's ever going to be better. And then one day you see a little like sunbreak and you're like, whoa, there is life out there. Like there's something good. And then as time goes by, you start to see a little more sun until eventually it's sunny most days and you still have storm clouds. You still have that. Like I am 5.5 years now from Luke's death, but I had the storm clouds this morning. 23 years ago today is the day he asked me to marry him. Oh. And so, you know, of course I'm thinking about that. I'm looking at pictures today and I'm having grief, but it doesn't last as long. You know, it's just like a quick storm and it's over. But those beginning days were really hard. But as I started to get healing, through many different things. I did grief counseling, regular counseling. I read every grief book I could find. I laid on my face, praying to God, asking for the peace that passes all understanding. He always gave it to me. And as I started getting healing, I was like, okay, I want to do this with my life. I was a teacher before that, but I was like, I want to help widows. Like I want to help people because I want them to know this feeling of mourning into dancing and beauty from ashes. I want to point them to the only one who can do that. And so not only did I start my podcast, I started writing a book that I didn't finish until years later, which I'll touch on that in a minute. But I also was like, I'm going to start a group for widows because there's none out here. And it's really crazy because widows are mentioned 103 times in the Bible. God wants us to take care of widows. Yeah. But yet so few churches do this. I always tell people, just ask your church, how do you support widows? Because most of them aren't doing it, you know, and then that's where we can get a program in place. But I decided to start my nonprofit called Widow Goals. And we have been meeting for about 3 years, and we get together the third Monday of every month. And it's widows of all ages from all backgrounds and just have this connection with each other. And then I decided to like spread that out. Other people wanted to lead groups. So we're now in 30 cities. And then the big thing that we do right now are widow retreats. We have one coming up in January. We have 70 registered right now, and they're widows from all over the country. Some of them are just signed up. They don't know anybody. And I put together these great speakers. It's going to be an amazing thing. So I really had decided like, I want to make something beautiful from this. And I feel like God has done that in my life. And I want everyone who's grieving to experience that, not just widows. Like I want anyone who's gone through grief, which is basically any of us, like we've all gone through grief, to be able to know that it's not always going to hurt this bad. And then the other big thing that I decided to do is, you know, the beginning of my journey, I started a book. I wrote 3 chapters, and I'm glad that's all I wrote because I didn't know anything compared to what I know now. So May 23rd of 25 was the 5-year anniversary of Luke's death, and I decided I am going to write a book. I'm going to finish my book by that date. I'm going to launch it on that date. So I had this really big goal, and I ended up writing the whole thing in about 4 months. And it's called Widow Goals, Steps to Finding Peace When You Lose Your Spouse. And it's 30 different goals that can be read in any order. And they're all biblically based with Bible verses in every chapter. Things like get out of bed, re-enter social situations, have an eternal perspective, surviving the holidays, and so on. And so I started that. I launched it, which was really special to launch it on that day. And then since then, I've created a workbook and a leader's guide. And my goal is to get this in churches across the country because most churches don't have anything for widows. And when I say widows, I also mean widowers. And church is actually one of the loneliest places when you've been widowed because you feel like you don't fit in anymore. You've got the families. There might be some singles groups, but they're usually for like 20-year-olds. You know, most of us are like 30, 40, 50 or older. And so it's a really hard place to fit in. And so what I really want to do is create this, I've created the program, but get it into churches across the country. And so that's something I'm really, really passionate about is educating churches. Like, what are we doing for widows? You know, God calls us. I remember the first time I read the verse about God is a defender of widows and a father to the fatherless. And I was like, that's me and my kids. You know, and I was able to learn more and more about how he really has a heart for us. And so it's kind of my mission to get it out there. Part of my story too is I did remarry about 2.5 years ago. which is amazing. My husband's name is Joel, and he's so supportive of the widows ministry. Like, I literally financially could not do what I do because, newsflash, if people don't know, you don't really make much money from podcasting, all that stuff, but we do it because we want to share something that God put on our heart. And all the work I do with widows, I'm able to because he's able to financially take care of us, so I can do the things that I'm passionate about. And I know that God had him in my life as part of my ministry and my calling. And yeah, so that's a little bit of my story.
No, that's awesome. And I'm curious. I want you to go into, like, what effort do you have to put in? Like, how do you encourage someone that has a loss? And because at the end of the day, it sounds like I haven't experienced a loss like that, but it sounds like you have to have it in your mind that I want to get better.
Yes.
And how do you encourage someone that maybe not have that motivation?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, first of all, one of the biggest things that I tell people is you have to feel it. So a lot of people who are grieving, they just want to stuff it down. They want to keep busy. They don't want to do anything like that. But what we feel, God can heal. That's one of my favorite quotes I like to say, what we feel, God can heal. And so first of all, you've got to let yourself feel it. And what I say to people that are like, they're not really spending the time working on themselves, I'm like, getting through grief is your job. The first year that you are going through a loss, like, you need to treat it like it's your job to get better. And how you do that is diving into the books, like grief counseling, finding a community of people, finding a church, and dive into it. But like, if people do not do anything about it, they're going to be in the same place in 5 years. So let me give you a great example of this. So let's say I went to my car right now and I noticed it had a flat tire, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to come back in a year. It'll be better. I come back in a year, it's still flat because I didn't do the work. I didn't put the air in. I didn't do anything. It's the same thing with our grief recovery. If we do not pour into it, if we don't do it like it's our job, we're going to be in the same place. And I have seen this. I work with widows all over the world, and I have seen the ones who are 5, 10, even 20 years later, they're like a new widow because they have not worked through it. They have not put their effort into it. And so, I challenge those people, like, I know you want to feel better. Like, I know you do. And so we've got to put in the effort, and you get out of it what you put into it. And so those who treat healing like it's their job are the ones that move forward. So I just really encourage them that I know they want to feel better, and so that it's worth putting in the effort, for sure. Great question.
Yeah. And I do know that you are a grief strategist, right? You are a grief recovery certified. I'm sorry, a certified grief recovery specialist.
Yes, yes.
So I, just for the listeners, even though she went through a loss, but she's also certified and educated in the in this field as well. What would you say are some misconceptions that people have on grief?
Okay, this is the biggest one, and I believed it until I went through it. Okay, so most people think there are these stages of grief that you have to go through. Okay. Well, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, that's who invented those. She created the stages for people dying, not actually for those grieving.
Oh, so okay.
Most people don't know that. I had to get some education. It was like 2 months into my journey when I learned this. And so what we have instead of stages are waves. Grief comes in waves, not stages. It can come out of nowhere. It can be a song, a smell, anything, and it's more like a wave, and it'll knock you out for a little bit. But what this did for me is learning that I didn't have to go through all these stages. I was like, oh, then there's nothing wrong with me, because I'm like, I didn't go through anger. I didn't go through denial. There's all these stages. And when you think that you have to go through them, then there's like this feeling of something's wrong with me if I didn't do it. So that's the biggest one, I would say, is that people think you have to go through stages. Also, that there's a lot of grief myths that I learned when I became a grief recovery specialist. One of them is keep busy. And, if you just keep busy, then you're not going to grieve. But like I talked about, you're never going to work through it if you don't do that. So, that's another one. and that it's a certain timeline. There's no timeline. There's no like wrong way to grieve. We all do it differently in different times, and we definitely shouldn't compare to other people. And it's not so much how much time has went by, it's how much work went into it. Or for example, pilots, they track everything in like flight hours, how many hours they've actually flown, not how many years they've been a pilot. It's the same kind of thing. Like we need to, look at our grief as like, how much time have we really put into healing? Because it's not time on its own. It's what we do with the time.
Yeah. Like you said, we all go through grief. We all go through loss. What are some ways that family and friends can best support someone that's grieving?
That's a great
without
question.
saying the wrong things or without doing the wrong things. What are some things that, because we have family friends that are going through loss, and I say even for myself, 2 weeks ago, my pastor, or pastor emeritus, he passed away. And so, it's been challenging. Like, I haven't like cried or, felt a certain way, but I do know that it's impacted me. It has impacted me because that was my mentor, and my sleep has been off. And I talked to some of the brothers, I'm waking up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning ever since he's passed away. And it's like after, I just started sleeping through the night, and some of the other brothers at the church were saying, hey, that's what's going on with me. Like and you wake up 2-3 o'clock in the morning and I may fall back asleep, but like it has impacted me in that way.
Yeah. It can definitely impact your body when you're going through grief. But what I would say to those who are wanting to support someone going through grief, there's a couple things. One of them is to just listen. So many people try to say the right things and they say the wrong things. At least this, don't ever start a sentence with at least you have this many years, at least you're young, at least, but instead this is what you do. You say, I have no idea how you're feeling, but I'm here to listen, and then just be quiet. Like, that's it. I have no idea. Don't try to say, like, a lot of people try to compare. Oh, I know how you're feeling. This happened to me. No. Like, you don't know how they're feeling. So don't do it, but just listen. And then the other thing is to be there 3 months later, 6 months later, 12 months later, because that's when it gets harder. When everybody leaves, the funeral, the service is over, that's when it's really, really hard. And when we need our friends and family, and this is what I tell people to do. Get out your calendar, however you track it. I do Google Calendar. Put in the date that their person died and remember on that anniversary to reach out to them. Because that's one of the hardest days, because so many people don't remember the date. And so it's very, very lonely. Even that first year, I was surprised. My best friend forgot. So I told her how important it was to me. And so she put in her calendar, and now she never forgets. And then also, if it's someone who's widowed, writing down their anniversary date with their spouse, because that's another hard one. And just being there when the people disappear, when the last casserole comes, when the last flowers come, that's when we need our church family to surround us and say, you're still important. We still love you. We see you, because it feels so lonely, because it's like your life has completely been turned upside down and everyone else just seems fine. Their life is still going. So you as a support person can be there for them. And also, here's another big thing, like what not to do and what to do. Don't say, let me know if you ever need anything, which I have been guilty. I have said that to people, but I've learned that a griever doesn't know what they want. So instead, be very specific. You know what? I'm going to bring you dinner. I'm going to come pick up your kids and take them to the park. I'm going to clean your kitchen, whatever it is, but be very specific and just step up. Like, I really appreciated the people who just stepped up. Like, one person, I didn't even really know her. She just said, I'm going to send you groceries. And I was like, okay, thank you. I had some friends say, we're going to come clean your house. I'm like, okay, like that's great.
Yeah.
I just needed those people to step up. And so that's how you can support them. And by saying the name of their loved one, they're not going to fall apart. Like, we like it when people say, the person we love's name. Like, we want to hear memories. We want to hear their name. I think one of the worst things people did to me is pretend it didn't happen. Like I have one specific memory of an acquaintance. We weren't really friends, but she was an acquaintance. And I remember seeing her maybe a month after Luke died. I saw her at Target and she didn't say anything. And it was so awkward. And so I just said, I don't know if you know, but Luke died. And she was
when you say she didn't say anything, you mean she just didn't acknowledge
Yes, she talked about like the weather. I don't know. It was not about Luke. It was just random small talk. And so I was like, no, I'm going to bring this up. And so I'm like, I don't know if you know, but Luke died. And she said, oh, I heard that. I'm so sorry. And I didn't like it. Like, I like it when people acknowledge it. So I try to do the same thing, with people that have lost someone, make sure that I acknowledge it. And people don't acknowledge it because it makes them uncomfortable, like themselves. But you got to get out of thinking about, oh, this makes me uncomfortable, and think about the other person and make them feel seen and heard. Because when you lose someone, especially a spouse, that's what I know, it can be so lonely. And you can feel like nobody gets this. Like, I had a lot of good friends and they were all still married. And it was really hard for me in the beginning to even feel like I could relate to them. And that was why it was important to me to find a widow community, because they understood it. They got it. Even, I still have a lot of great friends that are widowed. A lot of us are remarried, but we still have this common thread that happened to us. And so, yeah, there's lots of ways you can support the people that you love.
When you began, how was it when you initially started dating again?
Oh man,
what was that process like?
Crazy, because so the last time I dated, I was in my 20s. Texting had not been invented. It was right, completely. Luke and I had to call each other. There's no such thing as texting. My kids are like, "What? There's no texting." No texting, no social media. There was none of that. And so then you step back into the dating world in your 40s, and it's a completely crazy world. I did just Facebook dating for a little bit, went on a few really bad dates. Okay. And it was like a really strange world. First of all, technology's changed everything. And then second of all, the very first time that I was alone with a man, I felt like I was cheating, even though, Luke had been gone a year or whatever. It just was this weird feeling. We'd been married 17 years. Yeah. And so it was a very strange process. It was strange for my kids. But really just kind of walking them through it. When I started dating Joel, he lived in Louisiana. I lived here. So we went to college together and then reconnected through Facebook, actually. And walking my kids through it, that he's not trying to take your dad's place. Yeah. He just wants to be a support person, and walking through love again, when you're in your 40s, it's so different. And everybody has baggage. Most people are widowed or divorced at this age. And so everybody has stuff that you have to work through, and then blending families and all of that. So it was a lot. And I have a lot of friends that choose not to date or not to date for a while because it's overwhelming thinking about starting over when you've been with someone 15, 20, 30, 40 years or whatever, and to think about starting over. But, just like I say, it's better to have loved and lost than to never loved at all. I also say it's better to have loved and lost a second time, possibly, than never to love again. Because, even I was having this conversation with my son, he's 17 today, and talking about, he asked me recently, if you knew on your wedding day to daddy that he was going to die, would you still do it? And I'm like, yes. A million times yes, because you wouldn't be here. And also he helped me become who I am today and set me on this path that God had for me to work with widows. And and then he's like, just today he was like, but I can't believe you got married again. What if you're widowed again? I'm like, but it's better spend this time, and I don't want to live in fear. I don't want to live in fear. I want to John 10:10 says Jesus said that he came to give us life and life abundantly. That doesn't mean we just sit around. I've seen widows do this. Their spouse dies and then they're like, I'm just waiting to die so I can join him. And I'm like, no, God has so much more. If you have breath in your lungs, God has a purpose for you, and so, but anyways, all that to say, dating was a little crazy, but I just knew, I felt like God had told me early on that I would get remarried. And so it was actually, it was hard in the beginning when I just did the random dates, but when Joel came along and I really got into, a serious relationship, it was beautiful. lots of hard moments, lots of grief. It's a strange thing because like I'm very happily married, but I still, like I was saying, I grieve Luke. Like this morning,
Yeah.
it's our, it would have been 23 years ago we got engaged. I mean, we did get engaged 23 years ago. So there's like a mix of emotions. But what I explain to people, it's like if you have children, you have one and you're like, I could never love anyone else this much. And then you have another child. And it's like your love expands. And I feel the same way with getting married again. Like I still love Luke and I love Joel. And God just helps your heart to expand to love another person. So yeah, it was a crazy world, but I'm very, very thankful for Joel and for God's plan to bring him into my life. And yeah, but it can be a little overwhelming when you're looking into dating again.
When did you know that you were ready to date again? Like what were some like indicators?
Yeah, and then people ask me, this is a very common question, like how do I know when I'm ready? Basically, when the thought of it doesn't make you feel nauseous. Like a lot of people in the beginning, like they feel sick to their stomach. That's how I felt in the very, very beginning. Like months after, when people are talking to me about dating, I'm like, I can never do that. It feels like cheating. And so when you don't feel like that anymore, that's the first sign. And when you actually like go on a date and it doesn't make you, it's like exciting instead of like, I hate this. Like it's kind of like this shift. And so it's not really about a certain amount of time. For me, it was about like a little bit after a year is when I actually was like, I feel like I'm ready. I took off my wedding ring, everybody does it different. But I was like, I feel ready. And so then I started that's when I started like the dating apps. And then that's when I reconnected with Joel and decided, I think we started dating at like 18 months after Luke died, like a year and a half, something like that. But everyone's different with their timing. So that was my personal story.
What's your position on like someone this their spouse passes away and then they get engaged like a year later, do you and individuals saying, well, that's too soon? What's your position on someone that's not married or hasn't been through a spouse that passes away and they make a statement like it's too soon? What's your position on that?
Oh, I think that's horrible. They should never say that. Like no one gets to judge. They have no idea what it's like to go through it. I mean, I've had two of my really good widow friends. They were married a year after their spouses died or less. One of them I think was 11 months. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like nobody can judge how much time it takes. And here's another big misconception, like the amount of time you wait till you date again, like maybe I need to wait 5 years. That means I love my spouse more. No, it doesn't, and so I would, if somebody said that to someone, I would try to kindly say, you don't really have any idea how it feels. And it's really a personal decision. Like that's completely up to that person. Whether they are ready or not, and they know that, we shouldn't judge anybody. But yeah, that does happen. It's like people want to give you advice, like it's too soon, like oh, it's too soon. Oh, now you need to be dating by now. People hear that too, like oh, it's been long enough. You should be dating. And every single widow story, and I know so many of them, they're all different, and some of them never want to date again, and that's okay, and some of them do. Like it's really a personal decision. And I knew that I wanted to, so.
No, that's awesome, and it's encouraging, because I think sometimes the widower may feel it might be not pressure, but may feel guilty, if they're thinking about, hey, what my wife or husband, friend, and in-laws, what would they think because I'm doing, I'm moving on too quick. I'm moving on, at this rate. Before I let you go, Michelle, I know you talked about your book, but I do want to give you another opportunity, give you an opportunity to share, how they can get the book, what the name of it is, and maybe a couple takeaways that you want the reader to get from your book.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. So it's called Widow Goals: Steps to Finding Peace When You Lose Your Spouse. It's available on Amazon. And I would say the biggest thing that people have told me, I have a lot of great reviews from people who've read it, widows, widowers, people who aren't widowed, have told me that it's really helped them in their journey. Number one, to not feel alone, that other people get this, and that basically the steps, because there's 30 different goals, have helped them to just kind of take it a piece at a time. And that was kind of my goal, that, grievers can't usually read a lot, like they can't comprehend a lot because your mind is in a crazy place. And so I wanted it to be where they could, just read it as they want, and take it at little bite-sized pieces. It also has widow reflection, so questions at the end of every chapter, as well as action steps. So it's something that they can put into action. And like I said earlier, there's also a workbook for people that want to go deeper. And then there is, let's say you ask your church, what do we do to support widows? And they say nothing. Well, you could yourself use the leader guide. You don't have to be widowed to use the leader guide. You could use the leader guide and you could implement this in your church. And all the information about the program, if you are listening and you're like, our church needs this, you can go to widowgoals.org and you can click on support program and it will tell you everything about it. And I also give discounts to churches who want to implement this program. So yeah, that's a little bit about it. Also, all the widows programs I talked about, you can check if they have them in your city. It's widowgoals.org, has all the information as well as the podcast.
And one thing I'm going to do is, put your information, the links and everything on the show notes so they can check it out. And also, if they want to get, because I'm assuming that they can, they have access on your website to be able to, if they want to sign up for like the conference or anything. Is that still available?
That is on there too. Yes, that is. You just click on retreat and you'll find that. Everything we talked about pretty much is on that website.
Okay, awesome. This was In My Humble Opinion with Chaz Douglas. I have Michelle Bader, Ebersole on today. Thanks again, Michelle, for coming on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
Thank you.